Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a story about a creature that actually holds a terrifying Guinness World Record. We are talking about the deadliest individual animal in recorded human history. And I mean individual, not a swarm, not an entire species, but one single solitary animal. Let's just jump right into it. 436. Literally 436 people lost their lives to one single tiger. For 7 long years, this apex predator hunted human beings across 2 different countries. I mean, if you do the math and average that out, it's more than one person being killed every single week for 7 straight years. It's just a staggering, almost unimaginable death toll. They sent experienced, seasoned hunters to stop her. And, well, they totally failed. Eventually, an entire army was mobilized and sent after her. And the absolute best they could do? Just chase her somewhere else? Okay, so let's dive into this for a second. Because normally, a wild tiger wants absolutely nothing to do with you. Given the choice, an animal like this is literally built to avoid us. It'll spend its entire life staying as far away from human beings as it possibly can. So what on earth would make a creature wired to avoid us suddenly start hunting us with such relentless efficiency? You know, most dangerous animals hunt at night, right? And that gives us this comforting, if completely false, sense of security. You lock your doors, you wait for the morning, and you kind of tell yourself that the daylight belongs to you. It's safe. But human hubris can be a really dangerous thing, because this tiger, she erased that safety entirely. She did something almost no man-eater ever does. She hunted in broad daylight. If the sun was up and you were out in the open, you were a target. She actually watched the local people, learned their daily rhythms, like exactly when they went out and when they came back, and she adapted her hunting specifically to their schedule. To really understand how she could be so devastatingly effective, we've got to look at the environment. This whole thing took place in the steep, heavily forested Himalayan foothills, specifically in regions of northern India and Nepal. And the villagers there faced an impossible dilemma. They couldn't just lock their doors, stay inside, and wait the tiger out. For these small, scattered villages, the forest was everything. It's where you went to cut crucial firewood. It's where you gathered grass for your livestock. There was absolutely nothing optional about going into those trees. The forest was their kitchen, their fuel, and their paycheck all rolled into one. And tragically, the people most exposed were the ones doing the daily, unglamorous work of just keeping their households alive, which meant the women and children were by far the most vulnerable. Now, her killings didn't actually start in India. They began in the late 1800s, right across the border in western Nepal. First, it was a single death, then another. And over about 3 years in the Nepalese hills, the death toll climbed to near 200. People completely stopped traveling alone. The authorities eventually ran out of options, so they sent in an organized armed force. But here's the thing, they never killed her. They basically just pushed her across the river into a neighboring country. The nightmare didn't end, it just relocated. Over the next 4 years, the terror shifted to the district of Kumaon in India, and that is where her deadliest years were waiting. What she did to Kumaon is honestly kind of hard for us to imagine from the safety of our modern lives. The entire district simply stopped. When word spread that she was near, whole villages would fall completely quiet in the middle of the day. Doors were shut tight, fields were totally abandoned. You could walk into one of these towns and see no one at all. Just empty dirt paths, the sound of the wind, and this heavy, constant feeling of being watched from the tree line. And the absolute worst part was never knowing. You never heard her coming. I mean, a healthy tiger moves through dense, thick brush without making a single sound. The terror lived inside that silence. It lived right there in the thin space between being fine and being gone. The government eventually put a massive reward on her head, pulling in seasoned, famous bounty hunters from all over the place. They set traps, they waited through the long nights, and every single one of them went home with nothing. The tiger had simply learned every trick in the book. But then, the whole dynamic changes. Enter the volunteer, just an ordinary young man who had actually grown up in these exact hills and knew them better than anyone. He volunteered to track the tiger down. But when officials offered him that massive government reward, he outright refused it. He didn't want the money at all. He took this incredibly dangerous job simply because his people were dying, and he genuinely believed he could help. He embarked on this exhausting 4-day trek on foot, pushing through the thick, unforgiving forest just to reach the terrorized town where she was last seen. And when he finally arrived, he found a town full of homes, but not a single person outside. The attack that had finally brought him there had just taken the life of a young woman named Premka Devi. Knowing the tiger was still near, he followed her trail into the jungle. Now, he knew that when monkeys start screaming and birds scatter into the sky, it means the apex predator is moving below. So he came up with a desperate, incredibly risky strategy. Step 1. Ask the terrified villagers to spread out and make as much noise as humanly possible. Just flood that silent forest with sound. Step 2. Use this massive wall of noise to push the tiger out of the dense trees. And Step 3. Wait out in the open grass, literally betting his life on where he thought she would step out. But the plan almost collapsed entirely. The villagers were so terrified, they actually started making their noise way too soon. Suddenly, the hunter is sprinting. He's slipping over rocks. He's tripping over tree roots. He's just fighting to reach the open ground before the tiger gets there first. He arrived completely out of breath, absolutely certain he had missed his window. He forced his breathing to slow down. And then, the tiger stepped out of the trees right where he had guessed. His first shot struck her while she was moving. His second shot missed completely. The tiger turned and charged straight at him. As she closed in, he fired one final shot, and she dropped into the grass. After 7 long years, the forest finally went quiet in a way that meant it was truly over. Now, I want to slow down for just a moment here, because yes, the hunter has won. The terror is over. But as he walks up to examine the body of the animal that killed 436 people, we really have to ask a profound question. Was she a monster? Was she born inherently evil, just driven by some natural malice toward humanity? Well, what the hunter found when he examined her body changes absolutely everything about this story. He looked into her mouth and found the true reason behind 7 years of bloodshed. On one side of her mouth, her long canine teeth were completely broken. The upper canine was snapped right in half. The lower one was shattered all the way down to the bone. And this wasn't from some recent fight either. It was a very old injury. Years before she had ever harmed a single person, someone had shot her. The bullet didn't kill her, but it did something arguably much, much worse. So the crucial point here is, to understand this tragedy, you really have to understand the biology. A tiger hunts with those large canine teeth. They are the essential, absolute must-have tools required to bring down the fast, powerful, wild prey that a healthy tiger relies on to survive. That bullet had destroyed her tools. With half her mouth in ruins, natural prey was permanently out of her reach. Every deer was just too quick, every wild boar was too much of a fight. She literally couldn't do her job as a wild tiger anymore. She was severely injured, she was starving, and she was incredibly desperate. And because she was starving to death, she was forced to look for the one kind of prey in that forest that was slow. The one kind of prey that could not fight back with fangs or sharp claws. The one kind of prey that simply never ran quite fast enough to get away. People. Humans were the only prey this crippled, desperate animal had left to survive on. You see, she didn't become a killer because something inside of her was evil. She became a killer because a human being, years earlier, had taken away every other option she had to eat. The young hunter looked at those broken teeth and understood this profound truth immediately. These animals were almost never born wrong. They were made wrong. It was a single bullet, an old wound, and humans pushing deeper into their habitat that created this nightmare. We accidentally created the exact killer we were so terrified of. And this single realization changed the entire trajectory of the hunter's life. Now, he did continue tracking man-eaters for a time, mostly because someone had to protect those vulnerable villages. But over and over again, he found the exact same thing. Man-made injuries were causing the behavior. So eventually, he set down his rifle and he picked up a camera instead. He spent the later years of his life fighting fiercely to protect the very animals he had once been sent to destroy, advocating for them to have their own space, safely away from human weapons. That young hunter's name was Jim Corbett, and his legacy was so profound that today, the most famous tiger reserve in India actually carries his name. Jim Corbett National Park was the very first national park the country ever created. Every single year, travelers go there hoping to get a glimpse of a wild tiger, protected and left in complete peace. The exact hills that this tiger once haunted are now protected land where tigers are kept at a safe distance from the villages at their edges. They're finally allowed to be the one thing she was never allowed to be, simply tigers. Which really leaves us with this final, lingering thought. The tiger Jim Corbett stopped back in 1907 is still remembered today as the deadliest animal that ever lived. But when you trace her story all the way back, past the 436 lives lost, past the army that couldn't stop her, back to the very origin of the conflict, you don't find a monster at all. You find a starving animal completely crippled by human interference. So when we label nature as monstrous, how often are we simply looking at the consequences of our own actions? When you trace a monster all the way back to its origin, who is really to blame? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today, and keep questioning what you think you know.